Hello everyone, my name is Samantha White and welcome to my Zero Waste Kitchen. Today I thought that I would try something a little different and I would show you guys how I would show you guys how I make tortilla chips. I'm gonna move these somewhere. Okay, so just a disclaimer before we get started. I am not a professional chef. I've had no chef training. I am not saying that this is the right way to do anything at all. I am just gonna show you the way that I make tortillas and the way that it works in my life. Please don't take this as the only way to make tortillas or the correct way to make tortillas, because I'm sure that it is not. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, we are going to consult the recipe book because I can't remember this recipe in my mind, so I'm using a recipe book and I'm just going to follow that. That's why it's sitting here. So the first thing that we do is 3 cups of flour. This is actually a ½ cup measure, which is why I had to do it 6 times in case you were counting and you're like, that's not 3. It is 3 cups. So 3 cups flour. Then we're gonna do 1 tablespoon each of salt and baking powder. 1 teaspoon salt going in, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, which good thing, I was a little worried this morning I wasn't gonna have any baking powder. I have some, but not a lot. If your baking powder or your flour is clumpy at all, I would recommend using a sieve to sort of sift it in, but mine's not, so I'm just gonna put it all in here, and then I'm going to mix the dry ingredients together just real quickly just to combine them. And then we're gonna work on the wet ingredients. So the wet ingredients are sunflower oil and warm water. So I have warm water sitting in my kettle right over there that I heated up to a boil and then I just let sit for the last like 10-15 minutes so it's just warm. So what you need is a cup of warm water, yes, a cup of warm water and a 1/3 cup of oil. About a cup. I'm gonna mix the oil and water in here. So I'm just gonna pour the cup in there, and I know that oil and water do not mix, but for me, it makes the next step a lot easier if the oil and the water are just in the same container, I guess. All right, now I'm gonna measure the oil over here to a 1/3 cup. Pour that into the water. Now, this is where things get a little tricky because you have to be able to do things with both hands, or you need a second person for this. So if you can't do different things with both hands, I would recommend asking a friend to help you with this part because we are gonna slowly pour in the oil and warm water mixture into our dry ingredients. Okay, I've gone as far as I can go mixing with this spatula. So I'm gonna go in with my hands. Make sure your hands are clean if you're gonna do this. I washed mine right before this video, so mine are clean. Okay, so we have now formed this lovely dough ball. Just going to flour this surface a little bit. What we're gonna do now is we're going to move these things so maybe you can see. We're gonna split this dough ball into 16 mini dough balls, I guess. So I'm gonna start just by sort of splitting it in 2 pieces. So those are similar, sort of, in size. 2 pieces, now you're gonna split these 2 pieces into 4 pieces. Hope you see where I'm going with this. And voila, because of the magic that is editing, we now have 10 little dough balls that I have rolled. I've just taken them and rolled them between my 2 palms like this until they're like sort of a ball shape. And I put them on this plate, and we are now going to let this rest for 10 minutes while I sort of clean everything else up. I'm gonna set a timer on my phone for 10 minutes so that it'll go off and I will know that it is time to roll these out into tortillas. has been 10 minutes. These have just been sitting here resting. So the first thing that we're gonna do right now is I'm going to turn on a cast iron skillet to about low heat. If you have never made tortillas before, I would say roll out all your tortillas, then worry about your skillet. Do these steps separately. But because I make these tortillas all the time, I'm gonna roll my tortillas out while I cook them. So over here, I have just a cast iron skillet. It is seasoned, but not greased, so that is what you want. I also have a stainless steel spatula and a cooling rack where my tortillas are gonna land when they're done. If you don't have a cooling rack, that's fine. You can use a plate. It's not necessary. I just found it in a secondhand shop for like 25 cents. Couldn't turn that down. I'm gonna turn the skillet on. Low heat. It's just gonna sit back there. You don't want it to get too hot. If it starts like smoking or something, turn it off because that's way too hot. And we're gonna focus on rolling out our first tortilla. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna, oh, I washed this. That's wet, give me a second. We're going to take some flour, just a little bit of flour, and we're going to flour our board or wherever you're going to be rolling these out. I like to do it on my cutting board. You could just do it on the table, doesn't matter. And then we're also going to flour whatever device we are going to be using as a rolling pin. Now I actually do own a rolling pin, but I like to use this salt jar anyway. I just find it's a really good shape. So I'm going to sort of push my tortilla down into a circle shape, and then I'm going to, and I might have used a little bit too much flour for one tortilla here, but that's okay. And then I'm going to roll it out. Now you can make these tortillas as big as you want, as small as you want. If you have a tortilla press, you can use that to make them the perfect shape. Some of mine turn out circular, some of mine don't. It's just a gamble every time I make them. So there is my sort of circular, sort of square tortilla. And I'm just gonna set it here because my pan is not quite hot enough yet. And I'm going to work on a second one. Second tortilla. So now, let me see. Yep, hear that? I just put a little bit of water into my pan and it sizzled really hot, so my pan is ready. So I'm gonna take one of these tortillas and I'm gonna go over to my pan and I'm just going to lay it in, no oil, no nothing. So this is something that you're gonna wanna keep a watch on, and basically when the tortilla starts to really like puff up and get bubbles on the surface of it, you'll know that it's done and ready to flip. And when you flip it, it should look nice and golden brown and delicious on one side. So you can see how bubbly this tortilla is. That means it is time to flip it. I'm gonna go in underneath, flip it over. Nice and golden brown on one side. Okay, so we have successfully made an entire stack of tortillas. These tortillas are 100% edible. You can totally use these right now just as you would any flour tortilla, but that is not our end goal today. Our end goal is to make them into chips. So what I'm going to do really quick is I am going to take a pizza cutter and I'm just going to slice these up into chips that are about, oh, I don't know. I mean, you pick a size and just make them all a similar size. Okay, so now that we have cut up all of our tortillas, we have two options for how we are going to cook these. The first option is to bake these tortilla chips. If you had a large flat baking sheet, that would probably be ideal for baking these, but I don't. So what I'm gonna use is this pan that has a lid. I like to use both the pan and the lid. And then I also have this big thing in case I need more space to bake them. To bake them, the first step is to coat them in olive oil. So I'm just gonna throw some tortillas in here. And I'm gonna take some oil. I'm gonna drizzle the oil over them. And then I'm going to sort of mix them, toss them, I don't know. so that they get a nice even coating of oil. The more even the coating, the better, because if it's not even, they're gonna bake unevenly, which is fine, it's just they won't all be as crispy. Now I'm also gonna take my salt and I'm gonna give them a nice little coating of salt before they go in the oven. And now I'm gonna lay them out into, mix that salt in a little bit, I just realized. I'm gonna lay them out into a single layer in each of my baking containers. So these are all laid out in an even layer. I'm going to pop them in the oven for 8 to 10 minutes until they're golden brown. And then I'm going to sort of mix them up, stir them, flip them all over, and bake them another 3 to 4 minutes. And they'll be, hopefully, the perfect crispy tortilla chip. Well, the first chips are in the oven. I'm gonna show you the second way that I make tortilla chips sometimes. I use a deep fat fryer. So this is called the Fry Daddy. You're gonna need some sort of slotted spoon, and what I have is this little thing, which is apparently called the spider, which bothers me. So I just call it my slotted spoon thingy. And I'm gonna take about 6 to 8 tortillas that are cut into chips, and I'm going to sort of set them into the hot oil. Carefully set them in. I'm not putting my hand anywhere near the oil. Just gonna set them in there. Now, I like my chips a little darker, so I usually leave them in about 3 minutes. But if you want them just like golden brown, I would say 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes is about the perfect time to leave them in. And after about a minute, I take my little slotted spoon thingy and I just like press them down into the oil every once in a while. Because I find if I don't, they just sit there at the top because they float the whole time, and the top never quite gets that yummy golden brown oily thing. Now, before I went zero waste, I would always use a paper towel when I was done frying things. But now that I don't use paper towels anymore, I use my same little cooling rack, and I just put a sort of grungy towel that I don't care very much about, because if you use a towel to soak up oil, you're probably not going to be using that towel for anything else in the near future. So I use just this grungy towel that I don't care if it's ruined, and I can just reuse it for this exact same purpose over and over again. So that when my chips are done, I usually just take this, I put it over my sink, so in the divider over my sink, I set it there, and then I can just safely take my chips, sort of let it drain a little, and just put them right on the towel. Now, we added salt to the baked ones before we put them in the oven, but for the fried ones, you're gonna add the salt after they've come out of the fryer. And so, you know, this would be a great time to have a salt shaker. And I will catch up to you when this is done, because I'm just gonna keep putting chips in the fryer and waiting for my baked chips to be finished. That is how you make tortilla chips. And these chips, I mean, as you can see, are very crispy. They are very easy to use when you're dipping things like guacamole or hummus or salsa. They are just good in so many different ways. And I don't know if you can see, so the baked ones, they are a little bit, like they're not quite as even or as dark as the fried ones, but they're pretty similar. And I'm not gonna lie, this time I didn't do, so I waited about 10 minutes, I flipped them, I mixed them all around, put them back in the oven, and I actually put them back in the oven for about 6 minutes this time because some of my chips were thicker and so they took longer to bake than normal or than other times when they're not as thick. So baking times are approximate, everyone's oven is different, so just know that if 10 minutes and 4 minutes doesn't work for you or they're too burnt, just dial back the baking or add a little bit extra time. They will turn into chips eventually if you just leave them in the oven long enough. That is the video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Thank you so much for watching. If you did like it, please hit like and subscribe to my channel. And I will put this recipe in the description box below so that everyone will have it and everyone can use it. And I just hope that you guys all have a great day. Bye. Oh, that's hot. Mm. I love tortilla chips.